Chicago is picking off the NFL teams named after big cats one by one, and Caleb Williams is becoming the Chicago quarterback we have always wanted before our very eyes. It is a new Bears era indeed. You probably noticed that we've got some cracking new theme music this week. Big shout out to my cousin Michael Slon for putting that together for us. And we've got some cool visual upgrades for you as well this week. Big reason we can do all of that is because of your continued support for the podcast. We're already over 200 subscribers and growing every day. Thank you to everybody who's subscribed so far. And of course, if you haven't, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can continue to grow and bring you great Bears coverage. Ciaran, you were in London for the Bears game, and you weren't there just for a vacation. You did a little bit of work after the game.
Yeah, what did you more? What's it like having Keenan Allen in this offense? Obviously getting his 2 touchdowns today. First time scoring a Bears touchdown for him. What's it like having him on the field?
Yeah, it's great. He's been a big brother to me. He's been special from our relationship, and then obviously he's been special for many years. And so to have him on the team, his wisdom, his knowledge, and things like that, some stuff that he's taught me, it's great. So being able to give him 2 touchdowns today, I know we've been just super close.
Yeah, I did. I did work before, did some work after the game. Yeah, it was great. I found out about 2 weeks before that I was going to be able to cover the game, which was fantastic, and big help to the guys at the NFL for allowing us to do that. But yeah, got to talk to Coach Eberflus after the game, got to talk to Caleb Williams after the game, asked him a couple of questions in the press conference, and it was great. The guys that kind of were up there, they gave us, I think, most of them gave us 10 minutes. Eberflus was on for about 7-8 minutes. Same for Caleb. Same. Keenan Allen was up there for about, I think, like 12-13 minutes. He loved the media there. It was very good. And then obviously Cole Kmet was there as well. He was very, very funny. But yeah, getting to ask Caleb Williams some questions was definitely up there. It was a memorable moment for the weekend because it was not expected, because as most of you can probably tell, during a Caleb Williams post-game press conference, there's about 50 people shouting his name. So the fact that I was able to ask him a question was definitely rewarding for me as someone who has just kind of started off in this venture. So yeah, it was fantastic. It was enjoyable. But the most important thing was the Bears got to cross the Jaguars, and I got to see it. Because the last 2 games that I've seen the Bears play live was 2 years ago at Soldier Field against the Commanders, and our number 1 receiver that day was Dante Pettis. So that was that. And then the one before that was 2019 against the Raiders in London when Chase Daniel was the starting quarterback. So yeah, let's just say this was a little bit better.
A little bit different. Well, I appreciate your skill in being able to wedge your question in. It is tough in those press scrums to get your voice heard. You got it in there. You got a great question, and it's so cool that we get to have it here on Bears Era. So how was the rest of London for you? I know the win was great, but everybody was talking about how many Bears fans were in London, how big the events were, how much it just turned into sort of a Chicago home game. What did you witness during the week while you were there?
I had a feeling it was going to be a home game, just from some of the early signs from the week and seeing, prior to even me getting over to London, some of the videos and some of the photos that were coming up. And I had kind of a good perspective because I was at the game the week prior to the Vikings game and the Jets game. And this was completely different. The Vikings and Jets game, yeah, there was a good portion of Vikings fans there, Jets fans there, but the other teams that were supported throughout the league were more prevalent that week. when you looked at the Bears game this past weekend, everywhere you were in London, it was insane. Like there was so many Bears fans all over, from if you were in North London, if you were in Central, South, it was great. So can't really complain with the Bears fans. They really showed up and they got together, and yeah, it was fantastic. It was like actually being just outside Soldier Field. So it was good fun throughout the week.
Home away from home sounds awesome. We're so thankful that we've got this new home, and largely that's because of our primary partners, Blue Wire Podcasts and Homage Clothing. Again, anything you buy at the link on the screen or in the description from Homage, doesn't matter if it's Bears gear, college gear, they've got TV, movies, they just launched a Saturday Night Live line. Anything you buy using that link helps support us here at the podcast, so we thank you and Homage very much for that. With that, we're going to roll into Top Trio, and because it's a bye week, we're going to treat this as a State of the Bears week. We're going to talk about trends and things we've seen from the team over the first 6 weeks and how we really feel they're set up moving into the back half of their season. So, Ciaran, what is your first issue of the week?
My first issue of the week, I think the last 2 weeks, we kind of spoke in generalities about the defense and the offense, and I am finally going to give the fans what they want, and I am going to specifically talk about Caleb Williams, because he is the most important player on this team right now. His development was really important, and he's doing it in a way that Chicago Bears fans want. And from being at London, this is something that a lot of people were saying to me, was that we wanted to feel, it was the same for the last 2 quarterbacks that we drafted. The conversation has always been, we just want to feel good that by the end of the year, we know we have our quarterback. We know we have our quarterback, and it's been 6 games. And that's what I think that's how you should feel when you select someone number 1 overall. And that's how we do feel. And you're seeing impressive improvements, not just in terms of the statistic, but like we've mentioned it, like some of the things he's being asked to do, most rookie quarterbacks are not being asked to do. And it's really throw him into the deep end and see can he swim. And oh boy, is he swimming. And that is what we have to look forward to as Bears fans, is that you have a quarterback where there's going to be ups and downs still this season, but by the end of the year, like he's going to break all these rookie records that the Bears have for quarterbacks, because he's 3 touchdowns away from the most touchdowns for a rookie, which is bizarre. But still, he's someone that I don't think you can quite quantify just how much he has improved over the first 6 weeks of the season, because very early on he did look lost, but then things have already looked like they've slowed down for him, to where he's beating defenders not just with his pure kind of arm talent or anything, it's his eyes. Like, he's understanding what he's seeing in front of him. And that's something that you don't always get with a rookie. Sometimes it can take 2, 3, 4 years for a guy to slightly improve at that. We're seeing him improve within these first 6 games at some of the mental side of the game that typically rookies kind of come in and rely on their athleticism. They rely on that arm strength that they have and that talent that was the reason they were drafted so early. He's kind of relied on, like some of those throws at the weekend were fantastic, but he's actually relying on his smarts and his football IQ, where he's understanding what a defense is doing. He's setting up a defense, and it's great to see. Like, don't get me wrong, I love what Jaden Daniels has done, and obviously I think Bears fans would be excited as well if he was the quarterback. But I think also there would be that thing at the back of your mind as, can he do it against those big teams when he has to go through all of his progressions and has to change everything at the line of scrimmage? Because we've had guys before that haven't been able to do it and haven't been able to get over that hump. I'm not going to say I think that Jaden Daniels can't do that, just to put that out there. But I think Bears fans would be a lot more worried in that situation. But they see a guy coming in here, making all those adjustments and doing it. And while so much has been put on him, seeing genuine improvement. So I have to give it up to Caleb Williams. I think he has been the kind of little shining star that we all hoped we would see this year. The fact that we're seeing it within the first 6 weeks is nothing but positive, and I think that's the biggest takeaway from these first 6 weeks, that Chicago, we have a quarterback.
The most important thing is indeed the most important thing. We've always hoped it would be. And now, as I said in the cold open, we're seeing it happen before our eyes, and we're seeing evidence each week, and it's stacking week on week. There's a great shot of Caleb's eyes this week as he went through 1, 2, 3, 4 progressions in one play, and then actually ended up going back to the check down. But he went through all 4 progressions, full field read. Like you said, there are a lot of quarterbacks 2-3 years into the league in the NFL who aren't full field reads on most of their plays. They have them occasionally. They have a handful of them per game. It's already all on his plate. He's in week 6 as a rookie, and the growth has been really impressive, and the team is benefiting because of it. And that leads into my point of emphasis. The Bears are growing as a team, and the one specific way you can really tell that they're growing as a team is that they can make mistakes and still overcome them to win. This is a team in previous years that once they made a few mistakes, they just didn't have the means to dig themselves out of those mistakes, whether it was roster deficiencies, poorly adapted play calling, lack of experience, just how to shake off a negative play and go make another positive one. It felt like as soon as there were 2 or 3 missed opportunities, and those could be as small as a missed read, a dropped pass, a missed block, as soon as a couple of those stacked up, you thought, oh man, this just isn't the Bears' day. They're not going to be able to overcome those. Now, this team is making mistakes and still creating positives even within the same play. And there were multiple examples of this from the Jacksonville game, starting with the opening drive, allowed a very easy TD to Jacksonville. And, in past years, and maybe even this year, if you've got a little PTSD, you went, oh no. But now this team goes to the sidelines, makes its defensive adjustments, and just makes it harder for the Jaguars to score for the rest of the day. Just that easy. Missed pass block, Caleb sidesteps it, turns it into a positive gain very easily, doesn't take a huge hit. He doesn't look stressed. They stay ahead of the sticks. The drive continues. Missed read underneath. Caleb comes back and hits Rome. Harder throw, smaller window, but he still hit him. The drive still continues. They didn't drop the ball. They rolled on. They scored points on that drive. Screwed up blocking assignment on the goal line. You look at Tevin Jenkins on the goal line. He went the wrong way, folks. Like there's no world in which he's supposed to just let the DT come in unopposed. Like Bears would have taken a sack on that play 2-3 years ago. Instead, they find a way to score on that play. That's what good teams do. They take these negative plays and they either turn them into neutrals, so they're not going backwards, or the really good ones turn them into positives within the very same play. And the Bears did it over and over and over again in Jacksonville. And I think we're all, frankly, a little shell-shocked. We're a little stunned. We're not used to this. We haven't seen good quarterback play. We haven't seen a resilient team that can bounce back from mistakes and still come out with positive results. So watching this team grow, and make no mistake, exactly what you said, Caleb is a huge part of that. In 3 of the 4 plays I mentioned, Caleb was a huge part of that. It is key to this team, and it's key to every NFL team. If you do not have a quarterback, you are not going anywhere. Chicago now has their quarterback, and the question very quickly becomes, where are they going to go? It's going to be a fun question to answer over the rest of the season. But that brings us to our fan question of the week. And this one comes from Dante Purify. Does Ryan Poles need to make a move before the trade deadline? This is a very apt question, Dante. There have been a ton of trades today. Ciaran, I'm going to give you the first swing at this one.
It's an interesting one because of how it's phrased. Does Ryan Poles need to make a trade at the trade deadline? No. Yep. Do I want him to make a trade? Yes. But it depends on the type of player. Like I've kind of put it out there today that I don't particularly want him trading for an edge rusher because I feel like you can get your future edge rusher in the draft this upcoming season. And I would rather, if you're going to spend draft capital on someone, I'd rather get a guy that's going to be 21 or 22 versus a guy that might end up being in his 30s. And then kind of teaming that up with Montez Sweat. But where I do change this and where I would be willing to trade draft capital is if there is a team that is, let's say they're 1-5 or 2-4, and they decide that they want to sell, and there is a quality offensive lineman that if they were in free agency, so similarly to Montez Sweat last year, that you would want to sign them no matter what. If there's a player like that that becomes available, whether it's a center, whether it's a guard, whether it's a tackle, I'm all in. Because even if you don't need them particularly to hit the ground running and start straight away for you, if you plan on signing someone like that, and really this upcoming offseason, I think everybody knows it's going to be a offensive line and defensive line offseason. If there's a guy that is out there that you just think he's going to be far and away better than anyone that's going to be available to us in free agency, take the swing and get the guy in, because that's how we made ourselves better last year with Montez Sweat. And really, the price is worth it if it means protecting your most prized asset, which is Caleb Williams.
And even in this 2-game stretch, the real difficulties from the offensive line have continued to come from the interior of the offensive line, specifically center and left guard. Matt Pryor has actually played quite well at right guard. Center and left guard continue to be a problem. And again, they're one injury away from it being even worse. So I'm with you. If there's a quality interior offensive lineman available from a team who is willing to take some draft capital, because they are not in the same place the Bears are. The arrow is not pointing up for them. They need to load up with some picks and start looking at next year or the year after. I would make that trade, because I am on record here and multiple other places saying that the Bears need to solidify their interior offensive line, and it doesn't quite feel like it's there yet. Another piece of the puzzle would give me a little bit more assurance heading down the stretch that if something happens, this team's success is not going to be derailed by offensive line play falling apart later in the season. So, Dante, thanks very much for your question. And you are going to get a sticker this week. We got stickers in last week, so I will reach out to you and send you one because your question got selected for Fan Question of the Week. You all have this chance every week. Reply to my tweet. We'll pick our favorite question every week. If yours makes it onto the show, you too will be getting a cool Bear Era sticker. And with that, because it's the bye week, because we're focusing only on the Bears and not an opponent, it really felt like we needed a Bears fan for this one. So I swung for the fences, went for one of the best Bears fans I know, and also one of the best NFL podcasters in the game. Robert Mays is on the podcast this week, and you will see it right here. This week on Bear Era, we are extremely pleased to welcome to the show not only a long-suffering Bears fan, but also one of the hosts of one of the best NFL podcasts in the game, the Athletic Football Show. Robert Mays, welcome to Bear Era. How are you, man?
Doing well, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Wouldn't miss it. And it's one of the best times because the Bears are actually doing good things for the first time in a long time. And we couldn't have planned that if we tried. So this makes it a whole lot easier. But for those of you new to the show, the way we run it with our guests is Ciaran and I will each ask Robert a question, and then he has the opportunity to turn it right around and ask us a question about the Bears, which should be pretty fun. Ciaran, I'm going to let you lead this one off.
Yeah, so my question is, what are some of the positives that you've seen from Caleb that's, let's say, not what your average fan will see on their media broadcast? So things that he's doing at the line, him kind of organizing the protections, IDing the mic. What are some of the things that you're seeing from him that you think has been overtly positive to start this season?
I think those are a lot of the specifics that I would point to. And especially yesterday against Jacksonville, the amount of up-tempo, no-huddle stuff that they were doing with him, just doing a lot of the controlling and kind of dictating the offense from the line of scrimmage. It's incredibly encouraging to see. And there was a part of me over the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, mostly after the Colts game, which was weirdly the most devastating, kind of disheartening performance for a lot of different reasons. But coming away from that game, I was like, man, this is rough. And I was talking to a couple different people who are Bears fans. They watch every single game and that are, ball knowers of the highest quality, coaches, people like that. And I was talking to one person specifically, and I was just saying, I don't know if I like this. I just don't know if I like how much they're putting on his plate from a pure pre-snap operations standpoint, because he's 3 games into his career. And it's always so funny talking to coaches from different trees, because a lot of the guys in the Shanahan world, they don't have their quarterbacks do any of this stuff. They're not changing protections. They're probably just doing one can. They're not doing a lot of a la carte changing of plays before the snap. And part of the thought process behind that is we don't want the quarterback spending his time thinking about front structures and how he's getting out of plays. We want the quarterback to be thinking about, okay, when I drop back, this is my progression 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I think the focus on that, you see the benefits of it with some of these quarterbacks in that system. And so the fact that they were putting so much on him, I felt like you could see him being overloaded a little bit, where when he's asked to just play clean and on time, it feels like it's a little bit herky-jerky, when because there's so many things from a mental perspective that he's having to juggle. So the fact that now we're seeing some of the benefits of that approach combined with the fact that he's just a little bit more comfortable and smooth in the pocket, now there's a chance that in the long run, you're going to get the best of both worlds. And I think ideally that's what you're trying to accomplish when you're following the formula they are with everything that they're putting on him.
And it's happening quickly, which is incredibly heartening to me.
Yes.
I'm with you. In the beginning, it was like, okay, if this doesn't work, you broke him again, which is what we all say as Bears fans. And instead, we see a lot of the things that a lot of people, including us, talked about pre-draft with Caleb Williams was he has the ability to handle those things. He has the acumen. He has the intellect. He's done it before. Obviously, there's a huge jump to the pro level. None of us were sure that was going to occur. And now that over the past couple of weeks, we've started to see that, I'm with you. I feel a little bit better about it. And I think the ceiling is higher because you've already opened the cupboard fully and said you have control of everything top to bottom. A lot of quarterbacks don't have that, and you need to ease that in either in the back half of their rookie year or the first part of their second year. It's already happening with Caleb. We're 6 games in, and I kind of have to pinch myself and remind myself of that.
Absolutely. And I think that you see that with a lot of guys even deep into their careers. I mean, I think players really get the best handle on that probably, I don't know, like 27, 28. I think that's probably what I would typically say is like when the mental side starts catching up with the physical side. And if you're starting this way, if this is how you're introducing him to the league, you're probably accelerating that process. And there's so many different ways to do this, right? And I think that there are some coaches in some systems that say, you're going to sink or swim, buddy. We're going to throw everything at you from day one, and we're going to see if you can handle it. And if you can't, then maybe we'll scale it back a little bit. There are other people where the teaching progression is a little bit more deliberate than that. You're putting one thing at the beginning, one thing second. The sequencing of it is very important. It feels like with him specifically, they said, you know what? He's smart. We'll see what he can handle. And if we need to scale it back, we'll scale it back. And ideally, that's how you would do it with everybody, but not everyone can handle it. And so the fact that we have some initial evidence that maybe he can, and this was the best approach, I think you have to feel pretty good about that as a Bears fan.
I think feeling pretty good is a theme over the last couple of weeks for a lot of Bears fans, but I appreciate digging in and figuring out and trying to show some of those things that the average fan might not see. But being a former offensive lineman yourself, which a lot of people don't know about you, we have to talk about the shift in the O-line. The effectiveness over the last 2 weeks has been remarkable compared again to the first month. What do you think are the biggest factors responsible, and do you think it's sustainable?
I feel like people would be surprised about the offensive line thing. I went to my high school football practice 2 weeks ago now, and my high school offensive line coach was telling the current kids that I used to play offensive line, and they did not believe him. And so it was certainly a process of getting them to that point. But I think there are a couple different things that stick out. One, the fronts they're playing are just worse, right? So I think that's very important to point out.
Yep.
They're not as dynamic as some of the teams they were playing against a few weeks ago. And that includes even the Rams and like what Jared Verse could do to you. There's no Jared Verse, walking through that door on the Panthers. And I feel like with the Jags, that team is out of sorts enough where I'm not sure what to take from their defense overall these days. But a couple different things jump out to me. One, I feel like that the line and pass protection is getting so much better just playing with one another and passing stuff off. I weirdly think that Matt Pryor has been important to that. Like just watching him and some of the presence and just little tiny things where it's just like, I can slide this way against a stunt. I can pass this off. I know you're going to be here. And because those guys didn't play together a lot in training camp, Nate Davis is banged up for a good portion of training camp. It just feels like a little bit more time on task and a little bit more continuity with that unit has allowed them to play together better cohesively in pass protection. So I think that's been really nice. And I also think that in the run game specifically, I think there's a lot of that where it's like, all right, I understand if that defensive tackle is going to, spike inside or whatever, and I'm Matt Pryor, I can just climb to the second level. Same with Coleman Shelton. I think that they're just doing a better job of understanding when they need to come off on stuff, and it has allowed them to get to the second level more efficiently. I also think that there are just run concepts that they're using that are allowing them to get to the second level more efficiently. If you just look at all of the split zone stuff that they're doing, all of the perimeter runs where they're creating angles, I just think that they're doing a much more conscious and intentional job of allowing those guys to get angles and get up to the second level fast, Shelton being the best possible example of that. And so this is just an ongoing process of getting used to the guys that you're playing with and the coaching staff getting a better understanding of what their individual pieces look like and how to put those guys in the best positions to succeed.
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen from it is the fact that the mental errors we saw in week 1 and week 2 seem to have kind of eradicated a little bit. We mentioned last week there was a particular stunt that kind of confused the offensive line in week 1, but then Cole Kmet picked it up last week, and you're seeing the same sort of thing. I like what you're saying about the running game. I think Matt Pryor has been really important in terms of his aggressiveness out there. He wants to make sure that, one, he's helping the running back and getting that space to where they can get through, because when you're looking at DeAndre Swift now, yes, they're kind of going outside zone a little bit, but the holes are that much bigger. EJ, you mentioned it last week on the show. Yes. The vision isn't always there for DeAndre Swift. Not always there. But what we're seeing is that there's becoming those kind of creases where it's making it that little bit easier for him. And then I like the split between him and Roschon. So Roschon comes in certain situations where it's advantageous to have him. So one of the plays against Jacksonville that I was really happy with, it was a little bit of a high throw, but it was the one where Roschon basically bailed out Caleb after he went through a couple of progressions and just went straight to him. But having a guy like Roschon in there made Jacksonville think, oh, this is going to be a run. Because typically Roschon's the guy that on third down, they're going to give it to him and he's going to get those hard yards. But instead, he filters out to the left side and then eventually gets the ball. I think he gained 15, 16 yards on the play. So I like the way the play calls have been going, but I like, you mentioned it, Robert, the cohesiveness of the offensive line. They look like they're playing as one, while in week 1 and week 2, they kind of look like individuals playing out there.
I also really like the point you made about just throwing the ball to the running backs, period, because I think that's been another area where they're taking reps off of the offensive linemen. The production they've gotten on running back screens specifically over the last 3 weeks has been remarkable. I think they're like 5 of 5 for 100-something yards. And in weeks 1 through 3, they were 1 of 4 on running back screens, just completing them. And so I think that the efficiency in that area and what that does to the rest of the offense is huge. And the one name you mentioned that I think is worth bringing up here, even though he's not explicitly an offensive lineman, what Cole Kmet has done for this run game and just as a blocker, period. There was a play against Carolina, I want to say it might have been the first DJ Moore touchdown, where he's lined up on the wing to the right side and there's a blitz and he actually slides inside to pick it up. And so understanding that guy is one of your best 11 players, he should be on the field 90% of the time at the very least. That has also been a nice light bulb moment for the staff that I think has unlocked a little bit of everything.
And I think the screen game is a key, because you look in that kind of first quarter, second quarter against Jacksonville, and they kind of had the same formation. I think it was almost twice or 3 times in a row, but the first 2 times it went to the screen game, and then the fake came, where Caleb duped the defender and Cole Kmet was wide open. You get that. Everybody's replaying that touchdown, but that comes from Shane Waldron, the offense, setting up Jacksonville to where the screen worked on the first play. And then I can't remember exactly what the second play was, but on the touchdown, Jacksonville went heavy going in. This is going to be a screen. And then suddenly it's a fake. And Cole Kmet is wide open. They get the touchdown. So those are things I think as a coaching staff doing really well, but also easing, as you mentioned, Robert, that offensive line. So then you're getting these chunk plays, so it makes it more difficult for the defense to hone in what you're actually doing.
And it all ties together, right? You're building from
Yeah.
one concept onto the other. It all feels like part of a whole rather than random pieces slapped together like it often did over the first couple weeks. And I think that this is a process for every coaching staff that works with DeAndre Swift. You need to get to a place, hopefully early in the season, where you actually understand what he is. I think that it's so tempting when you look at his physical skill set, where he was drafted, all that stuff. And you want to say, oh, we can use this guy in a million different ways. Yeah, we can run choice routes with him. We can run all this stuff with him. And it's like, just get the guy in space. He doesn't have the best feel for certain situations. He's not the best zone runner. He's not going to be a good choice runner. Just get him on the perimeter with the ball in his hands and allow him to make very simple decisions, and you will profit in the end. And I think that it took a few weeks, but it does feel like Shane Waldron in that group have come to that realization, and I think it's benefited every single part of the offense.
It does feel like a perfect storm in a lot of ways, and I love the fact that we sort of talked our way around and then back to the running back, because it's Shane Waldron understanding who DeAndre Swift is, the offensive line picking up things that they didn't before, basically patching their own holes. And look, I think it's fair to say that Matt Pryor right now, regardless of pedigree or contract or anything else, is a better football player than Nate Davis is for the Bears right now. He is performing at a higher level, and the offensive line needed that. As a result, the guy to his right and the guy to his left look better. And the offense has decided, like, these are the things we do well. Let's see if we can execute them. And it's all kind of come together. Play caller, skill position, quarterback play has increased. Offensive line play is definitely the sort of root of that. And it's really cool to see it sort of all take hold and land like it did on Sunday. And holy crap, the Bears offense looked good, effective, was able to sustain drives, score points, all the things that we always complain about come true, but it's not one thing. It's like four things happening at the same time. And those sort of perfect storms or confluences are pretty rare in the NFL. It's really fun to see. Robert, that brings us to your question for us. What do you have for us?
Are you guys a little bit worried about some of the specific elements of what's going on with the defense? There are two things that I would point out. One, it feels like every single game in the first quarter or on the first drive, there's just a randomly incredibly effective drive from the opposing offense that just marches down the field and scores. There's the drive in the Carolina game. It just seems to happen every single game. And if you look at the success rates in the first quarter compared to quarters 2 through 4, they're middle of the road in the first quarter, and they're the best defense in the league in quarters 2 through 4. So maybe this is just a situation where they get a sense of how the game is going to go, they lock in, and that's fine. Or this is the sign that maybe the first quarter is a little bit more problematic than we thought, and they continue to give up like a decent amount of explosive plays. So is there an element of the defense, even if the overall aggregate numbers are still very good, that is still giving you guys pause 6 games into the year?
Robert, I'm a Bears fan. I'm always worried. That's my.
Listen, I come from a place that knows this very well. I come by all of this honestly.
Yeah, look, I agree to a certain extent. Like, I wonder, is it just opposing offenses scripting those plays and then suddenly the defense adjusts and then the talent kind of maybe wins out? Because a lot of it does seem to be kind of like last ditch tackles, last ditch kind of batting the ball away. We saw a couple of those in the end zone and a couple of drops from the Jacksonville Jaguars. But we'll give credit to the players who were around the football. There was 4, but I will say 3 of those were on the one drive, so it would have only counted for 1. But still, what I will say is, it's the Jaguars game might have been a little bit different. You're losing 3 of your 5 defensive back starters. Yeah. Hopefully, Kyler Gordon will be able to be back after the bye. We don't know the extensiveness of that injury, but it's one of those things that it'll be at the back of your mind until they can kind of put together 4 quarters where they look utterly dominant and against a really good offense. I think where there's optimism is against a team like the Houston Texans, who are expected to come in this season and have all guns firing. The defense was able to shut them down. So you hope that the talent kind of wins out. It kind of goes back to the old adage of Eberflus's defense, is that kind of bend but don't break. I'm always of the opinion, if you can have all the yards you want, if you don't score touchdowns, that's fine with me.
Unfortunately, they do allow him to score touchdowns. And the one that got me in that I reached out to a couple of people about on Sunday was, again, the first drive and particularly the red zone defense. They come out very vanilla just generally on the first drive, and then they didn't make any switch when Jacksonville hit the red zone. They played it as if they were on the 50. And they didn't pick up a basic switch. Guy runs into the end zone, pretty much uncovered, and they're kind of doing this at the end. Like I thought I'm like, guys, what are you doing? Like conceptually, you're off 8 yards when they're on the 12-yard line. Like that's not red zone defense. They made no shift for the context of where the Jags were. And that felt like, I understand coming out and, basically having a script on defense, seeing how the offense reacts the same way it goes vice versa, but they didn't make any shift whatsoever. And Jacksonville basically just walked in on the first drive. I was like, guys, like wake up. What are you doing? Thought there might've been a little bit of hangover, and then they make switches, which makes me feel better. But yes, as a longstanding Bears fan, I always have those nagging doubts in the back of my head. And that first drive was like, guys, like there's a game on. This is real. This isn't 7-on-7 reps.
There's part of me that looks at the success they've had so far on defense and believes it, just because we saw what happened over the back half of last year. They're clearly just so buttoned up on the back end when they're healthy, right? I mean, I trust that back seven with... If I had children, I would trust them with my children. Like I feel very good about where this group is right now. There's just part of me that looks at what they have up front, and in the back of my mind, it's like Ocean's 11. It's just like, you think we need one more? I think we need one more. And that's just kind of where I'm at right now. I know Darrell Taylor had his moment, and I know the pressure rates and stuff have looked fine over the course of the year, but I just feel like when we get into the back half of the season and you want to play where you're bringing 4 consistently, do they need one more consistent presence that's going to be a difference maker for them? And maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe by the end of the year, we feel good about where Austin Booker is and everything else. But that's just the one thing that I feel like I'm still a little bit fixated on, is that let's get ahead of this problem before it becomes a problem.
I actually think they need 2. And I'll say I agree with you on the other side to Montez Sweat, because you always want a good partner. You look at kind of what the Minnesota Vikings have. You look at what the Houston Texans have. Look, Darrell Taylor has been great. Rotational guy, comes in and makes some important plays for this defense. I think we mentioned it last week, EJ. Javon Dexter is playing at an otherworldly level, and Andrew Billings has been fantastic. But the reason why I say 2 is when Andrew Billings or Javon Dexter is not in there, that's when they have a problem. They need someone on the inside to be that rotational guy that can come in and still have that same sort of presence. Kind of like we just seen kind of today that the Seattle Seahawks have traded for Roy Robertson Harris, former Bear. That type of guy that can kind of come in and give you something in terms of pass rush, because I don't think there's enough there when Javon and or Andrew Billings is not in there.
Okay, I'm going to say this one very quietly so nobody outside of Chicago hears it. Holy cow, does Press Taylor love him some Evan Engram on Tremaine Edmonds. He dialed that up like 4 times in a row. He's like, this is free every time. And that it's a little very scary as a Bears fan, because Tremaine Edmonds was brought in to be your all everything high dollar linebacker that is uber physically talented and can cover the pass. Crossing routes, Evan Engram, he ate Edmonds' lunch. Engram was. And look, he's a great player, but I was just like, oh, can we scrub that off the film? Like, that's really bad. That's free whenever they want it. And they took it like 4 times, and it was like, yeah, you're going to have to dial up if you're Washington, and certainly the linebackers coach as well. Like, you got to come up with a different thing, because lots of offenses in the NFL have that intermediate crossing threat. It's not a high dollar position. You can be effective with that as a low dollar, player, and they just ate against the Bears. So nobody outside Chicago listen to that. Everything's fine. Nothing to see here. Move along.
The Washington challenge on the horizon here is definitely something I will be keeping in mind, just because it is a different sort of beast than anything that they've played against. And whoever had their doubts still about Washington and about what that offense was going to look like when they started to play better teams, and watch what they did yesterday against Baltimore, and watch how Jaden Daniels played. He's here. like there's no way around that. He's here. That offense is here, and we have to deal with them in 2 weeks. So I'm part of me is a little bit worried about how that's going to go, but part of me also believes that this defense is what we believe them to be over the first 6 weeks of the year.
All right, stay positive, Robert. We know you can do it. Thank you for taking a chunk out of your bye week to come talk to us on Bear Era. Always happy to have you on. We'll have you back. One of the true classics, Chicago's own Robert Mays here on Bear Era.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Having Robert on is terrific. I always love hearing his opinions about the Bears, and I know he tries to hold them in on the Athletic Football Show because everybody knows he's a Bears fan, and he really does talk about the whole league. I feel the same pressure on Bootleg. It's great to be able to just let him open up and talk Bears 100% all the time. So glad he came on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. He's fantastic. His enthusiasm for the team is evident, even if he does have a little PTSD from the Bears like we all do. But yeah, look, it was great to have him on, and obviously we're very thankful for him joining us this week when we didn't have a game to talk about. So it's always great to have Robert on the show, and he was excellent as usual.
Absolutely bleeds navy and orange, and we have somebody else here that also does that. Our producer, Mike Mercado, we give him a minute every week to talk about the issue that is most pressing to him. So here you go. This is Mike on the mic.
Happy Week 7, Bears fans. Welcome to Mike on the Mic. I'm producer Mike Mercado. Here we like to highlight a player, a matchup, or a storyline going into each Bears game. And it is a bye week for the Chicago Bears. So hopefully, just like them, you are enjoying a restful Sunday and an NFL jam-packed schedule. And speaking of schedule, that has been one of the main talking points for Chicago Bears fans heading into this bye. The Bears have won 3 straight games, have a record of 4-2, and have blown out 2 teams in the Carolina Panthers and then in London, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, waiting for them is the number 2 overall pick and MVP candidate, Jaden Daniels, and the Washington Commanders. Now, Bears fans are wondering, is the 4-2 record real? Are the Bears legit? Now, coming out of this bye, the Chicago Bears will have one of the toughest schedules in the NFL. They have to play every single one of the teams in the NFC North, which, by the way, that division, every team is over 500. They still have to play the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. The Chicago Bears have a tough schedule in the second half of the season, which is why it was important for them to take care of business and have the record that they have, to see the progression that we've seen, to see the defense be as elite as it is, to have some form of trust for this coaching staff. Because at the Bears, not taking care of business against Carolina, against Jacksonville, against the Rams, had things stayed the same like they were against the Titans, the Texans, and the Colts, it'll be different vibes, different conversations heading into this bye week. Now you can rest up. Now you can get healthy. Now you can continue your development and your progression as a team heading into a huge matchup instead of worrying about how hot your coach's seat is or how bad of a decision your GM has made at quarterback. It's going to be a fun bye week and even better week 8 as we wait to see number 1 versus number 2. But that is what we're spotlighting here on Mike and the Mic. Back to EJ and Ciaran.
Always great to hear from Mike. He too is echoing the same sentiments that we are, that Robert is, that this team is coming together and we're actually going to be able to start looking at some of the larger issues down the stretch, which is unfamiliar territory, I think, for Bears fans. This is kind of uncharted. It's fun and it's awesome, but we don't necessarily have a map for this.
No, we don't. This division is a juggernaut, and we get to play all of them within the space of like 6 to 7 weeks, and that's where it gets really, really interesting. The fact that the NFC North, the team that's in 4th place, is 4-2, and in I think it's like 60 to 70% of the divisions in the NFL, you would be first in your division with that record. So that just shows you the task that the Bears do have in front of them.
Yeah, the powerhouse is coming down the stretch, and we are really going to get a chance to see what this Bears team is all about as they dive into division play and some outside the division foes who still have power in the rest of the league. So by the end of the season, I don't think we're going to have any question about how good they really are, because they are going to go through the ringer. Their schedule is the hardest remaining in the NFL by strength of schedule and win percentage as it stands right now. So it's going to be a big test for Chicago, but it feels like they're gearing up for it and some momentum is absolutely building. So we'll see how long that lasts. It's going to be a fun ride. We will bring it all to you right here on Bear Era. And thanks to our primary supporting partners, again, Blue Wire Podcasts and Homage Clothing, we'll be here every week talking about how they do through that gauntlet of a schedule and bringing you all the highs and lows when they occur. Couldn't be happier to have you here. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you keep getting these podcast notifications every week. And with that, we will see you next week when we preview the Commanders game against the aforementioned Jaden Daniels. Take care.